parental permission. And even then, be cautious.
Why?
Because parents and kids are very partial to their hair.
Have you ever cut a kid's hair too much? I have.
Oh my gosh, my daughter, she had such a botched job once, it was awful.
I've been specifically requested by my hairdresser to never ever cut my own hair.
My stylist takes care of it. It can only take so much.
Is that your wife?
My wife doesn't do the lean.
My
Are you
two
gonna
sons,
show us the haircut? Is that what you're
Yes,
doing?
that's what I'm working on right now.
get in and out. I mean, let's do it. Yeah.
We should try to have some on top.
You know.
$25 a haircut, I wish.
Well, that's what I think we're
I
gonna.
know sometimes it
start
pays
doing.
to get older because my
$25.
highlights, they're coming in for $3, let me tell you
There
what.
you go.
I would
Then
be
you
part of
put
that
that
right
on.
if I didn't
But
know.
it's look, get me
They're coming in,
I just
coming
need
in
some
white.
My dad's hair, this color.
Yeah.
My mom's hair, this with a little black in it, so I'm doomed. It's over.
You won't do it all.
I'm
One of the
far
same
from
ladies
$25
as I
haircuts.
The same lady cut my hair for 21 years. She's like up here.
She's doing good. You should keep her
She
around.
puts it one way, the same way.
Yeah,
All right.
my wife was using the clippers.
What's wrong with you?
She's using the clippers and she's like, whoop. I'm like, there's no way to fix that, Mom.
Just time.
Yeah, we have to.
It's 4 o'clock. We're getting started with the pledge. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
At this time, I would ask if there is any public comment.
Greg Newell, Hermon. So, on the budget sheet, hopefully it's changed on this one, I haven't looked at it. Can we get away from previous years using the budgeted number and actually use the actual number, see if we're actually budgeting the correct amount? I think someone on the previous meeting actually stated that. Since there's no public workshops on the calendar for finance, I got a list of questions that when I was looking through all the paperwork, I really didn't understand. Smart boards, 6,053. I don't know if teachers are actually still using smart boards or whether they're using the TVs or whether we should look at a new device. It's also under non-capital technology, which I find that smart boards are technology. This is under DOE Regulation Instruction Booklet. That was on page 17. On page 31 of that same one, there was $20,000 for computer repairs. I'm really amazed that we're spending that much for repairing computers. On DOD School Administration, $5,000 on laptop carts. There's one in the bus garage not being used now. I'm wondering if there's others in the district that are being used. Replacing TVs for $2,400. Are these the smart TVs or like regular TVs? Just wondering what that was about. There was $10,000 for network engineering support. Wondering what that contract was looking like, and is that for all the schools or just individual schools? This is under student and staff support, page 44, page 45. There's $10,000 for elementary school technology repairs, $5,000 for cabling, another $5,000 for cabling, and then $2,000 for phone support. I'm not sure what phone support is. Another $2,500 for cabling. Then under telephone, we're paying $7,200 for telephone when we have VoIP phones, so I'm not sure what that's about. I'm not sure why we're still spending $3,200 on a SIP trunk when it's not needed. I'm not sure why we're spending $120 on a Spectrum phone since we have VoIP phones. Also, each of the schools have $2,000 set aside for VoIP phones, which I'm finding interesting that we're having to replace, I guess, all the VoIP phones. I don't know. Just wondering, there's 2,000 for a battery backup. There's one brand new one in the bus garage, still sitting in the box, never been used. Also had questions on what is info SVCL non-capital outlay. There's 15,000 for that. Not sure what that really means. Another 10,000 for cameras and network upgrades, which these are really two separate things. 5,000 for paging speakers. Not really sure what that's about. $2,000 for network adapters. There's probably 100 of them in the bus garage not being used. Same with patch cables, another $2,000 for that. They're still in the packages, probably another 100 of those in the bus garage. And then copier leases. We have 8 copiers for 4 buildings, totaling $33,000. I'm just wondering, like, one of them is a $12,000 a year lease, which I find really extensive compared to all the others. So just wondering why we need 8 copiers for 4 buildings. But that's
We need
just
like 30.
huh?
Sorry, I don't mean to interrupt. So we need like 30 copiers with the way that.
Just wondering. Thank you.
I'll just speak to one of those. We will continue to show the budget as budgeted, not the actual amount. We will be, and do that moving forward. That question can go away, or people can keep asking it, but we will continue to show the budget as a budget, because that's what it is. It's the budgeted amount.
So let me clarify my question. It's previous years, like 2022, 2023, 2021, those budgeted years. If I didn't make myself clear, I apologize. We should know those actual numbers so we can actually budget the correct amount. Thank you.
So at this time, I'd ask Jamie to run us through any changes to the revenues and just kind of give us a quick overview on where we're at revenues-wise.
Sure. Okay, so I think we all have one of the little revenue packets here, little 4-page packet. So the very first account number is the local raise for food services. This is the additional amount that we have requested from the town each year to help subsidize the food services program. Given the way the state has restructured providing enough subsidy to cover free meals for all students, we do not feel that that is a necessary ask anymore, so we have completely eliminated it in this budget.
That's projected to happen again.
That it's projected to happen again for next year. Yep. Transfer in from reserves, we currently have $60,000 sitting here. We have an increasing population of out-of-district placements. I believe we have 5 or 6 of them right now.
Up to 6.
I think we did just get one more. Yeah. So these can be quite costly. 2 of the kiddos that we have are actually state agency clients. So a portion of that revenue, a portion of those revenue expenses will be offset by revenues that we are able to collect directly from the state for those 2 students as a direct, like dollar for dollar reimbursement, if you will. But there are still students that are not going to be reimbursed like that. So this $60,000 we feel is appropriate to have here just in case we need it, and if we don't need it, then we won't request it to come in from the reserves. We won't ask the town to reimburse us for that. Then we start getting into our local appropriations. This is the ask from the town. So the local appropriation and programs line, this is the amount from the 279 that the state says needs to be contributed. So that has an increase this year of $143,000. The local appropriation for debt service, this is the, correct me if I'm wrong, it's the elementary project, right? Elementary bond. This has an annual principal cost of $510,000. The interest goes down a little bit more and a little bit more each and every single year. And the debt schedule we have for this indicates that there will be for this upcoming year $10,000 drop in that. So we've reflected that in this budget. Local appropriation without state, this is additional funds that we request from the town in order to close our budgetary gap. That number is in here as flat to FY '24, or the year we're currently in. We've not increased that one. K-8 tuition revenue, we do have one student in our K-8 grade span that is a family paid tuition student, which we have not previously had. That is new to us this school year. So we have included, it is anticipated that that child will return to us next year, so we have included that revenue. Secondary tuition, we're waiting for some extra data and not really finalization, I guess, but
Enrollments,
yeah, more
UTC.
solid type numbers of enrollments and where those kiddos are going to be, if they're going to be at the high school 100% of the time, or if they might be UTC students, and how many are going to be in each place. So for the moment, we have left that number alone. Special education tuition, you will notice that there is an increase to, a slight increase to that this year. It's anticipated we're going to have another high school student from sending district that's going to require their own one-to-one. And when that happens, we can bill that sending district for 100% of those services. So we have increased that revenue to reflect that change. Interest income, when the FY '24 budget was built, our interest coming into the account was between $500 and $600 a month. At some point later in the year, that swung to more like $5,000, $6,000, $7,000 a month, depending on what the balance was. So we have increased that by $45,000 this year. High school event admission receipts. I think all we're seeing here is what has come in for fall sports. I believe there's basketball gates, right?
There are, but
Winter
again,
gates.
right, but again, we're way down because the students are free.
Right, but I don't believe they've been sent over yet, so I don't think they're reflected in the actual.
I can check on that tomorrow.
Okay, so for the moment, we've kind of left that at the 25,000 mark, especially where this is the first year of the students getting in free. We really don't have a good idea until all of those gate receipts have been received on where that number truly should lie. Miscellaneous revenue, we did increase up to 30,000. We did identify a couple of other items that could potentially come in and be posted to that account. Building use revenue, we included $500. We haven't really had any groups that would normally be billed utilizing the facilities. I mean, it's been, we went through a period of time because of COVID where it was just off limits. We weren't having outside groups come in at all, and I think they really just haven't picked up to where they may have been in the past. But of course, it's different from my time. I don't know what that should look like prior to my arrival. Let's see. Transportation, oh yes.
Yeah.
Oh yes, $8,000. So this $8,000, now that things are starting to pick up, the rec department is starting to take the rec kids places in the summertime, various outings here and there. And so this is something that hadn't really been taking place because of COVID. They are doing that, so we have included a revenue in the budget for those services that our transportation department is providing to them. And we bill them per trip. Shauna goes through, when she sees those records come through, she generates an invoice, sends it over to the town pays it, we're good to go. Then we are on state appropriations. This is from the 279, this is the state portion of the 279. So this year we have a $327,000 increase on our 279 from the state side. As I mentioned earlier, with state agency client, we have 2 kiddos that are out of district placements. So we, as of right now, this FY '24 actual, we are at $75,000, and that's a direct result of those 2 kids. So we have increased the state agency client revenue for the upcoming school year in anticipation of those students still being here, still being state agency client, and us still being able to recoup those funds. Last page. I've got my staple in a strange place here, so I'm all over the place. Okay, high school state agency client, we've dropped that back to 5,000. We haven't had high school level state agency client revenue for a couple of years, but it does not hurt to include a portion because we never know when these kids are going to come in. They just appear. They just drop in on us. Let's see. High school ROTC revenue. This is an estimate based off from what the salaries are of our ROTC personnel that are here. That's an agreement between the school department and the military that the school department pays 50% of the military pay for those two individuals. So every month they send us a MIP statement, and it equates to more or less 50% of what their pay is, or what they're actually giving us. So this is where I anticipate those funds will be for FY25. Our balance forward revenue, this is the amount that we are saying of our fund balance that we're going to contribute to building this FY25 budget. We have it at $1,080,000 as of right now. The $80,000 is the other chunk of the bus from the ED 279, which we do have a full bus in the expense side of the budget. So the FY25 279 includes a portion, I think it's like $66,000 is what it includes for a bus in FY25. So this $80,000 would offset the cost, the remaining cost to purchase that.
So I'd like to pause right here and just clarify that this is the number. This number is not in stone yet, this 1 million, because if you go down to the final revenue is total revenue is $19,481,467.92. We have more expenses currently. We're working on that, but we have more expenses than $19,481,000. And so anything that's different would either have to be offset, right? Any expenditure above and beyond that would have to be offset by either a reserve account or increase. We don't anticipate any other increased revenues. We don't think the tuition rate is going to go up anymore based upon our early projections of enrollment. So the gap would be made in this fund balance, this $1,080,000. And so that's what I want you to keep that number in mind as we try to close the gap between expenditure budget and the revenue budget. And this assumes no money left over at the end of this fiscal year, right? So it assumes that everything has been spent to the dollar, and I'll show you why I assume that, or at least what I plan to do if we don't meet that goal. Any questions about revenues?
I just want to make a statement that it will be good if that number goes up on one-time capital expenses, because we do have the substantial amount of unassigned funds. So that will be a great way to expend and get our capital needs met, pull it forward, spend it down.
Yeah, you're already seeing 80,000 plus.
With that,
right?
yes.
So on revenues, I just want to make sure I get the right categories. The categories that impact the local line items, there's 4 of them, right? It's the local raise for food, the local appropriation for operations, the local appropriation for debt service, and then the local appropriation without state. And those would be all of the categories that would impact local contributions in period, right?
Correct.
I say in period, excluding reserve stuff.
Correct.
So, Jimmy, do I have this right? We're looking at about a 1.4% between those 4 categories, a 1.4% increase for the town versus about a 3 and change inflation, about 1.4%.
It sounds right. I haven't actually done the
Okay.
calculation, but it sounds right.
It's $83,053.
I'm
Yeah.
with you.
1.38,
Yeah, okay.
just to be 1.38.
1.3, okay.
Brian's all over it.
Hey, Brian,
Brian's all over it.
Okay.
Not to jump slides, but those are the numbers that Jesse was just referring to. The 4,300,000 and change from the ED 279, the 571 in debt, the 1,279 in local, and obviously zero requested out of for food service. So it does not include the 60,000 out of reserve, obviously, because we're not 100% sure if that will be coming. So
Yeah, these are the ones, this is the
I didn't
complete
think you said
ask
that.
from the taxpayers. That's what these four are. The reserves are money that we already have, that we set aside for future use. So this would be just strictly, the monthly appropriation that the town.
It looks like there
License.
might be a data entry error on there, just to give you a heads up, on the additional local. It looks like on the sheet it's 1,216,296. So just when you update the slide for tomorrow night. Or maybe I was reading the slide wrong.
it was pretty small, and I could have certainly hit the wrong button too. 1279, it's 1216. Yeah, I'll make that adjustment. Thank you.
Just, yeah, it didn't affect your
I think
calculation.
it's smart.
No, my
Next-
calculation-
Figured on here.
When we say balance forward revenue, and we say carry forward and fund balance, we're talking strictly the unrestricted or undesignated fund, or are we talking?
The carry forward number is strictly undesignated carry forward. Money from undesignated fund balance that we're committing to the FY25 budget.
Okay.
It is not reserves or other designated funds.
And that money assumes that there is no carry forward, that everything this budget year has been either spent
Has been
or
spent.
designated
Right.
to a reserve
Yep.
account.
Okay.
I like the end of that sentence. I heard that.
Let me walk you through what we are anticipating. Where's my play button? All right. So this is the proposed budget, and I just want to highlight what this budget is, what we are attempting to do with the budget. Obviously, the budget includes the addition of, and I say obviously because we've been talking about some of this stuff now for several years in regards to, we have these positions that are federal, and hopefully someday we can roll them over. But we are at that breaking point now. The federal money for the staffing is gone, or it will be gone. So this budget does include adding a federal middle school funded teacher into the local side of the budget. This budget does keep the nurse at the middle school who has been paid through federal funds into the local budget. This budget does accommodate for wage and benefit increases for 3 collective bargaining units and all district personnel administration. Please be mindful that the wages for one of those collective bargaining units and benefits has not been determined. It would also be your biggest unit, which is the teacher's unit, or everybody attached to the teacher scale, which is about 106 employees. So that is still there's a placeholder number there, but that's still up in the air. We're negotiating at this time. This does include supplies for all students K-8. K-8. I'm just gonna K-8. And I will try to say that multiple times because I goofed on that last year, and that was certainly not my intent for high school kids to come with no pencil on the first day of class. So this is a K-8 supplies. It does include, if you're at the tech or listening to the tech committee, it does include laptops for all students at that 9-12 level. And you heard Mr. Freeman, we are one-to-one across the district. It's just a matter of, do they go home? Do they stay in carts? Do they, right? It's really more of an access thing. But at the 9-12 level, laptops, 9-12. And our design and our hope is that this budget would continue to reduce the undesignated fund. That is one of our primary goals, is to recalibrate and make sure that we are not over budgeting And we are also reducing the undesignated fund. Those are two primary goals of mine as we move into this 25 budget, 24-25 school year. This just gives you a timeline. I'll share this with the school committee on Monday night, but obviously we kind of kick things off. It's really not a finance thing, but facilities is a big deal, and so we have that facilities committee and identified some projects. And I have got approval from the school committee to conduct a facilities 5-year plan with Carpenter and Associates. So I actually signed the paperwork a day or two ago, and we're going to get that going. So that'll give us a lot more insight into what we need to do moving forward. But you have an idea there of some of the stuff that I do internally with the principals and what the principals do. There's a ton of work that goes into this. I can't thank them enough. And although pushing up our timeline about a month was very challenging, it has been a good process for us, and I'm glad that we are where we're at. So we are on February 29th, and then the goal, I already have to change that March 18th. It's going to be a different date after talking with the chair. We're going to propose a different date. I think it's like March 26th or 27th. Still getting it in before the first town council read on March 28th. Josh, I believe so. Yeah. So this is the population. This might not be 100% accurate on this day, but you have the populations per the ED 279 and what we are currently enrolled at. You can see the dip there in the 23-24 school year. So where we're at right now, 1353. That dip really hit us hard at the high school. That was a dip we did not anticipate. We do anticipate a bounce back year, if you will, at the high school. I used I think I used 75 at kindergarten. So I didn't go real big, I didn't go real small. I don't know yet, right? We're trying to go conservative. So that causes just a tiny little dip there at the elementary school. But again, I could come back in 3 months and go, hey, we're going to be at 495 at the elementary school next year, which will be great for the ED 279. But that just gives you a general idea of what our population is doing, what our trends are. If you can figure those out.
Like in the 2023, 2024, should the green line be 1388?
No, it's the average of the 279.
So you can't add up. You can't add up the bars before it to get to the. Okay.
No. Okay. No. I took the average of what the ED 279 actually gave us in those years. Yeah.
I think what he's saying, Micah, is the red, the orange, and the yellow bar before the green bar.
Yeah, they don't add up to.
They don't have it. Okay.
And that could just be a data problem, but I know that the 1353 is from.
I know the 1353 is
So
what it
it's
says.
the 3-year average.
Two-year enrollment average. Yeah.
So the red, orange, and yellow are actual for the year, and the green is the average.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's what I did. I'd have to check it just to verify, but yeah, the ED 279. Remember, it's going to take a 2-year average, and that might be. I can tell you. Let's see, the ED 279. I won't spend a ton of time on this, but you can see on the ED 279. Just highlight a couple of things here. Yeah, you can see what we were doing in October of 23. We're at 1353. So that was where our enrollment dipped this fall pretty significantly for our enrollment on October 1st of 2022, 1393. We had a massive dip. Our average is 1373, and that's what they base the finances on. And then I always show this one slide in particular. I just like people to see how the state does things. It doesn't make a lot of sense to most of us, especially if you remove multiple people, right? But what I always like to show in this is that Hermon, traditionally, you can see what we value and what we do as a district. The state says we should have 84 teachers for these ratio of kids. We have 88 teachers. The state says we should have 4.58 guidance counselors. We have 6. The state says we should have 1.72 librarians. We have 2. So you can see that if you don't fit into the mold exactly, right? If you're spread out geographically, if, right, you've got 3 buildings and 3 nurses, but you don't have, for example, under health, if you don't have 2,400 kids, you're gonna get penalized if you have 3 nurses. So I just like to show that slide. I think it's important to understand that we do get penalized for some of the positions that we have, but we value those positions and we think they're important to have in every building. So that's the ED 279. The notable change in the ED 279 is a difference of 2.5 students average in the K to 8, with an increase on all those students, not just for those 2 students, but for every student, the 801 students, the subsidy went up $234. So from $77.90 to $8,024, and our enrollment at the high school, again, on the average, dropped to 5.5 students. But our subsidy, remember that's the subsidy, not tuition. The subsidy also went up for our high school students by $486, as our tuition also went up, which that's a side note, but that's a positive thing.
Can I ask a question about the nurse? I know I'm delayed. Is there, and I'm assuming the answer is no, but I'm gonna ask it anyways. We have very high needs individuals in our school. In order for them to attend school, they need to have medical care on site. Is there any way to incorporate that into their special ed so it's reimbursed in some way through a special ed program? And I just planting a seed, probably not, but I thought I'd put it out there. Or through their IEP or some other.
I'll say at the middle school, the high needs students we have are not IEP level students. They're different needs that are outside of IEPs.
Yeah, and we have had that once. We had a student that it was required to have a nurse on site for that student to attend safely. But those are very rare. Even the students that are diabetic or whatever it might be, a lot of times you couldn't get that in an IEP. It would be very challenging. But we have had it, and the IEP pays for, or the special ed pays for a nurse to be on site with that student. Unfortunately, I shouldn't say unfortunately, typically that ends up being a one-to-one situation, so it doesn't benefit you across your body.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's a good.
The funding for ED 279, which line or lines does that hit in?
The funding is, so it tells the town, right, what amount they are required, so that would be your $4,301,000.
Okay.
And then it would be our $8,960,000.
8,960,000.
960.
Page 3,
Page
second
3.
one up from the bottom on page 3, Jesse.
Okay, so increase of 327.
Yeah,
correct.
43.
Yep.
Yep.
It may be worth just combining those two. So 560, 570, and just put over on the green, just say notable changes, and then just do plus 570K year to year. That would be beneficial, I know, for me, because I can see this, and I can see the students going up.
Yep.
And I can see the subsidy per student going up, but I don't know what's the total.
Yeah.
Until you correlate.
Yeah, and I know it's in here, and I know you cover it before, but I think it would just be good just to remind people.
Individuals, so that people, so it's easy to glean out of it. So you
Yeah.
have to-
Okay, yeah. Yeah, that makes sense to me. Total. The state. Okay. Yep.
Nothing crazy either, Mike. I mean, I would just put something in the green to say increase of 570K year to year.
Yeah.
Something simple like that.
Yep. So, big picture. So normally I say big picture till last. I'm just going to give you the expenditures. We right now in our expenditure budget have $20,078,578. Our goal is to bring that down another $210,000 roughly to $19,861,198. We're going to do that a couple of different ways. We plan on factoring in what Jamie and I spent, I don't know, I feel like we talked an hour last night.
Close.
But Jamie and I were talking last night about using some type of attrition percentage for staffing. So one of the hardest things to predict in the budget is the replacement of teachers leaving. Will they come in 20 years experience and full family health insurance? Will they come in University of Maine graduates single on their parents' health insurance, right? Like That's one of the hardest things to predict. Another hard predictor is how many classes will all our teachers take? They might all say they're gonna take 3. We budget for 3 classes. Half of them don't take anything, right? So that's, payroll is a challenging thing to predict. And so that's one of the things that we talked about. Do we utilize some type of attrition rate? Give credit to Jesse on that because that was his idea. But do we utilize some type of attrition on payroll? We do feel like our payroll budget, though, when you look at it historically, we are very good at what we actually budget and what we actually say we're going to spend. Budget, right? To actually what we spend, because Jamie builds the budget using a waterfall module, spreadsheets, where people are on steps, how much they make, how much they're moving, right, year to year to year. And so you can look through the last report that I gave out, and you can see very specific numbers for elementary staff, for high school staff, for middle school staff, for resource room teachers. But the other thing that we do know is that we traditionally have 3 to 4 to 5% left over at the end of every year. And so the other thing that Jamie and I talked about doing is going through and excluding payroll budget and looking at all of those lines. I think there's like 2,500 lines. And okay, where do we consistently over budget? And these numbers need to be brought down by X percentage. So my goal is to bring the budget to at least $19,861,000. I hope it's actually a little less than that. I'd like to be touching 19.7 something. And so that is my goal, and that's what we are going to do over the next couple of weeks. Is we are going to bring the expenditures down into that 19.8 to 19.7 range, and that would reflect roughly a 4% increase. So we recognize that having 5% left over is that's too much. You cannot have 5%, especially in the size of our budget. 5% is a very big number. We would like to see us in the 2% range. That would be a goal that we would have for next year, is 2% left over. We feel like that's a much more realistic number when you're talking about numbers of this size. So really recalibrating the budget and getting it to that number that I have in black, bold, italicized.
So at a 2%, with $1 million undesignated part of the budget, assuming it's $1 million, it may go up from there. That would be drawing down the fund balance by at least 600,000 or so. But knowing that number is probably going to be increased, knowing that 18.86 million isn't actually covered by the revenue. Yeah.
So Zach, let's just say the budget lands in the 19.8 range.
Yep.
If you were off 2%, you would still be drawing. You're going to see what the actual anticipated fund balance is. You'd be drawing $1 million off the budget next year, off the fund balance. If we were in the 2% range, if we were in the 5% range, we would not, and it would just go right. We would just keep moving the same number forward. Yeah.
And then once hitting that target of 2%, what would your plan be with the 2% that's left? Because on January 30th, it'll go into the unassigned balance unless something's done either right prior to because you anticipate it or right after because you're going to. So what's your plan?
My plan moving forward, I actually like what Mrs. Duran used to do. She used to have a 400-ish, I think it was always 5 or 6. Yeah. She had this one number and it just seemed to always be there. So I would then like to have that as a carry forward as the initial building block revenue of the next year's upcoming budget.
And that's your buffer.
That's your buffer.
If something happens.
Yeah.
One buffer option.
Right. But when
that's readily available.
Let's say we get the undesignated fund down into where we feel it is legal, it's under that 9%. We'd actually like to see it down to about 700,000. So you've got an undesignated fund of 700,000, and then you're just carrying forward $300,000 to $400,000 every year. It's your buffer. It helps you, and it covers adding a teacher. It covers something major, a boiler, right? It would cover anything that budget might run into.
Fuel's going through the roof.
Yeah, we're really blessed this year, right? Fuel wise, that moderate prices and warm weather. So, but that might not be the case next year, So this is I call the major expenditure improvements.
I'm sorry. Back to the other slide. One more thing. I just wanna point out, when we're talking about the 19.8 or 19.7, that includes a substantial amount of capital improvements.
It's on the next.
Okay, good, I
slide.
just wanted to say that out loud.
Yeah, and that is what I'm gonna show you next. Yes.
Is the 19.8 the attrition number? Is that what factoring in the
So-
attrition you guys?
That's how I did it based on 3 cost centers. I did it on special ed, regular ed, and other student support staff. But I also think we need to go back and do it for supply items.
Yep.
Yeah. There's a few that I'm like, okay, like where would the attrition be in here? I haven't wrapped my mind around it yet, but the ones with a lot of people in contracts, that's easy, right? Those are easy to see. There's a couple where I'm like, what do I do for transportation? Like, where do I put attrition for transportation? So I just have to figure out where to put that number. But
And I would say, as far as transportation goes, Jamie and you have nailed, like, you all have nailed transportation last year. So I wouldn't try to go too far into there. And this year, obviously, the bus situation happened, so that's gonna, but definitely in your labor centers, that's where historically it's showing up. And it makes sense if we haven't been calculating nutrition factor in it, then it's gonna be slightly higher than probably your target. So it looks like you're in the right areas.
I hope so.
And I would think the attrition and the carry forward are both accomplishing kind of the same thing.
That we're reducing overexpending,
Right.
budgeting overexpending,
Yeah.
right? Yeah. And we do very well budgeting our revenues, and so the goal would be to budget our expenditures to that same level and accuracy.
In the 19.8,
Yeah.
what level of attrition is that assumed at 1%?
So I did 1.5 in regular instruction, and I did 1.5 in special education, and I did 1 in student staff support.
Okay.
1%.
So what would we have to get to that 19.7?
Just going through the rest of the cost centers and probably reducing those further where I feel like, right, you can do 1.5 to me on a $8 million cost center, but if you get into a $1 million cost center, you should probably use 0.5%, or right, you shouldn't use the same percentage. So I've only done 3, and I didn't want to get too far ahead of Jamie because she's going to have to be the one that actually goes back into the expended. I get to just play on the overall numbers. Yes. So, because remember, it is important when it's all said and done, we need to show in the expenditure line items where this is, not just in the overall cost center. We want all the numbers got to add up. So,
No funny math.
no funny math. So speaking of capital improvements, you have got, this color showed up not bad, major one-time purchases. You have 4 categories. The large red category represents your facilities. The small green sliver working around the clock counterclockwise is athletics. The yellowish color, gold color, is your transportation, and your orange is your technology. We anticipate almost all of these to be one-time costs. I broke them down even further in another slide, but I wanted you to see that $406,000 of this $19,861,000 right now, what we're shooting for, and hopefully less, is one-time costs. So you've got a bus, you've got a water storage tank. I called it the door project, but we would like to replace many doors at the middle school, both outside doors, and these are big, heavy metal doors that are quite expensive. So there's some doors that we'd like to replace inside the building because we don't want the students, being able to kick in the door at the near the boiler room and things of that. Yeah, yeah. Some of them are reaching their end of life.
Standing on one side of the gym, you can see a sliver of light about maybe wide going down the entire doorway.
Yeah, and this all comes back to being more efficient, and it should save on heating costs. Certainly, it's a security concern. Another massive project in that is the engineering design. Right now, we're thinking that we have 2 science labs we would like to renovate here in this building, but we need to have those engineered, and we're getting bids back that are in the $60,000 to $70,000 range just to engineer the project. So we are planning on engineering that this summer and then moving forward with that project in the summer of '25. You also have IT, several projects there. Some of this antivirus software, we're still playing around with numbers, and obviously it would depend on if we switch out to like a Google Chrome book. But we do believe that that number will slowly fall off as we move in a different direction. Cameras and paging systems, we are looking at, we need complete overhaul in our elementary school of our camera system and of the paging system, and we'd like to do quite a bit at the middle school as well. So those are included in that. We would like to do a variety of battery backups in the buildings, and Alex can speak more to what those are. But battery backups, some new cabling runs to bring back, get stuff like you said in the tech meeting. And then the security audit, we anticipate that being, again, a one-time cost, and we think that's going to be around $10,000 to $12,000. So that's just kind of a broad level overview of our one-time costs that we feel are major improvements, either to facility, to IT, to transportation. Athletics, I think Rick wanted a couple extra sets of uniforms this year for some of our athletic teams. Incredibly expensive uniforms, and there was something else that does escape me now, but again, one-time costs that we normally, budget 1 or 2 a year, we're looking to, add in a few extra this year.
How much do we have earmarked for our current budget, capital expenditures? Offhand. We had to track, right, for
For FY25,
That was what,
it's
yeah.
like $256,000 and some change.
56.
So we're up, call it 150K from capital expenditures.
Yeah, I think
That's
that's
good.
And part of it was the the bus is normally on it, but it fell off because we didn't think we were gonna get it, so the bus should, you guys did nothing wrong. All of a sudden, they could give us a bus, so then we had to pay for a bus,
Yeah,
so
they gave
we
us
kinda gotta remember the bus isn't included this year.
Should, when we discuss using 1 million from the unassigned to be revenue, which is already in the revenue list, could you take another $406,000 from the unassigned and count it as revenue, so it increases our revenue side
Yep.
of it? Because it's not indicated.
It's not indicated yet, so when you'll see what my overall plan was, and that's why I flagged that number. Like, just be mindful of that, and one number, we're gonna come back to that again. But, so this is what you're looking at for, hopefully, we plan on one-time expenses, $406,500 in the one-time expense. Now, this
Okay.
is,
Before you move on, moving forward, are you generally thinking that your unless you have some like a science lab that you're redoing, are you planning to target your capital being 400,000 year after year plus inflation, or is this high, low?
so obviously I don't believe that the bus will be in there next year, right? We'll get reimbursed for the bus.
You will, but there's always, the state does not give us 100% of the dollars to buy a
Sure.
bus, so there's going to be some local cost.
Right, but that will be an
Purchase.
ongoing
Right.
cost, right?
So the bus will stay in, and
Right.
maybe, but how about the other areas? Are you thinking that we'll do facility capital at about 200,000 a year and IT about 88, or do you expect it to shift, or do you not know yet? That's fine.
I don't know in regards to IT. I know that we need to see this end of life report. I think that's gonna be, critical to look at. I know from a facility standpoint, one of your major projects, that's, I shouldn't say stupid, that tile floor in the cafeteria, massive project. Yes. That is something that we won't have again for many, many years. So no, I do not anticipate throwing $400,000 to $500,000 out in major improvements. But the good thing is, we will have experts tell us, starting next year, you better plan on, and I feel a lot more comfortable when they come in and evaluate all our sites and give us grades for category 1, I think they go to 5, category 5. So I'll have a better idea then. But I don't anticipate these types of costs next year.
And my thought is, if we can sort of figure out generally how much we're gonna allot to capital expenditures year over year, whether that capital expenditure happens that year, or if it's a matter of tucking the money away for a bigger expense later, it's gonna stabilize our tax situation. It's gonna prevent us from doing this. It's gonna help to prevent us from getting deeper into an unassigned balance, and it's just gonna provide stability. And we see it at the town side with the roads. Like every year we put massive amount of money into our roads. We're very unusual for a town. But it pays off because it's just like that.
It's consistent.
Yeah, and when you guys needed more money, we just lowered it because we didn't have a bond to have to pay. We just lowered it, gave it to you guys, and then we corrected. And so I just think that if we can, I know you're not there yet, that's fine, but if we can get to a point where we sort of think like that.
One thing that would give you some solace, I think, is that we are in years, it's either 5 or 6 from a past 5-year capital improvement plan, and not everything got done. Many things that were high ticket items on that got done, and many of the things that they identified in 2019, many of these were category 1 and 2 at that time. So we are actually we are getting to the end of the life cycle on that past facilities plan. I mean, things like roof, paving projects, a lot of that got checked off over the last 5 years. Now, we did have federal money to help out, so that's something that we should be mindful of. But I think that's why that plan is so important moving forward, and why I think we should the school committee did spend the money to do it. So, assuming, right, I said assuming, we do not know where we will end the year. Will we be 96% expended? Will we be 97% expended? Josh sent me the reserve accounts. I think it was on 124. So I put the date on there. And what I am assuming is that, and she's told me that we can't make a bold prediction, but we can at least use a placeholder number until we get a little closer to that time point. We believe that we will probably end the year with $250,000 left over, not spent. And again, that number could change, but my plan is for whatever amount that is, under 500,000, we set it aside in a reserve account for this high school science renovation. So that money is ready to go next year, and we don't even have to worry about that in our capital budget. In our regular budget. That money is ready to go out of a reserve account earmarked for high school science labs. We know that number is going to be between potentially $400,000 to $500,000.
Mike, I really like that idea. Just help me out with the time frame of it. So if we get to August or September and we get through the audit, and we have 250,000, at what point in time can we actually take that money and move it to the reserve?
I don't know what the actual legal move is on that one. What do you say, Josh?
To move it to the reserve, the town would have to vote on it.
Mhm.
But as soon as we knew, and I think this is where kind of what we've been talking about with the attrition, the carry forward, getting into that routine, we're going to have a pretty good idea as to what will be left over.
Is that something that we could put into the budget to be voted on for this cycle? Saying we have.
Yeah, so I've been thinking about this, it's funny you say that. So when we do the warrant articles for next year, we can do warrant articles for this year too. Or next year. Like, so we could, if we had a projection of what that amount would be, and let's be honest, we have a massive unassigned amount. So even if we're off by a bit, we're probably not going to cause a huge problem. Jamie's really good at predicting, at getting those things in. We could vote on it at that annual meeting.
So you're forecasting 250, so you say 250, and if you come and you only have 200,
Sure.
you still take 250 out of the unassigned, and it shows up in the warrant now.
Right.
That sounds pretty slick.
Yeah, and I think the nice thing is we'll have a much better idea when we get to June, right? Well, we have to write the warrant articles before
May.
May. But in May, we'll have a much better idea of, here's a number that we feel comfortable floating out, and we can move that number into, again, earmarked category for this significant project, but needed, I think it's needed.
Yeah.
We need to move into the 21st century in our science labs or into our labs.
And then that would just be part of the final, every July, there's a vote. Is it June, that the school committee does a vote, that if we need to move money to fill any, expense lines, that it can be moved.
Transfer costs.
Transfer
Yeah.
cost center, it could be part of that final vote for us too, Jesse. Just be kind of final, this is it.
I don't think we know by June, right?
We wouldn't know the number, but we'd have a better idea. of
Sure,
what
okay.
the predictor
Yeah.
would be. We would actually know the number, I think it's usually right around the end of September, we would have a pretty firm grasp on, Hank would give us that first, what's it called, interim report?
Yeah, he has the draft, October, he has the draft financial statements.
But that's for
completed.
last year,
So,
23. I'm so sorry, I'm very visual, so I'm not following. But I
right,
think the audit that he's gonna have then is actually for last school year, not this year.
No, it would be our undesignated fund for this year.
Mm-mm.
no.
June
The
30th.
draft financial statements that we have right now are for year ending June 30th, 2023. So when he comes in October of 2024, it will be for June 30th of 2024. So that is correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. I don't have it written in front of me, I don't follow well sometimes.
It's great.
But that gives us all the time to close out the year and get the necessary adjustments done, get the straggler bills throughout the summer.
And we can hold a special meeting. The other thing is I'm just gonna put it, I know it's not what we're talking about, but last year we have a predicted amount that we didn't spend, which was very substantial, so I question if this year at the annual meeting, we should move any of that into reserve funds, and I would hope that we can.
Well, I think you should wait and see what the final number is coming up. I would just say, so,
I'm talking 23,
Get through today, will you?
right,
you're through today.
so,
You're killing me.
Still putting it
You're
out
killing
there.
so,
Sorry.
this is what I would, this is how, I kind of bounce this off of Brian a little bit. And I'm trying to help people, because obviously, like when you're in it all the time, you just say numbers and I know it doesn't always, it's not always clear. So this assumes that $1 million that was budgeted as a revenue, not the one I just shared with you, but the budget year we are currently in is huge. Now, whether that's $250,000 going to a reserve account and $750 being used, or $300 going to a reserve account and $700 used, right? Whatever that fluctuation is, that assumes that $1 million has now either been spent or reduced, right, from the undesignated fund as of October 1st of this year, or being designated to a capital reserve improvement plan or to a cost. What do you call it? Reserve accounts? Reserve, yeah. Reserve, yes. So then the projection is here are your listed, the pie chart, right? Here are your listed one-time projects. So it broke them out a little bit more. The pads project, which is water, a water tank, a floor, tiling, asbestos abatement, the door project, the science lab engineering, the IT updates. So the total, the athletics, just again, the general total yielding a total amount of $406,000. So the total fund balance being used for projects is $406,500. So if you kind of visualize that as a revenue, you would need $973,224 to fund your operational budget. Jamie has in there $1,080,000. So I am proposing that line of $1,080,000 is $1,379,724. Your operational budget is being funded by $973,000 of that, and your fund balance or your projects is being funded by another $406,000.
So that would take us to 4%. The 791.
Yes.
Would take us to 4%.
Yeah.
And the same commitment that well, depending, because 4% is below the 5%, which is what we're coming up on.
Sure, that's what we're going for.
So, two things. One is with the same commitment that if we don't meet the target, moving it over into reserve funds, whether revenue comes up unexpectedly or expenses are down, having that same thought pattern.
Well, we might need to bridge the gap on the science lab, or there could be a variety of things that.
Right, so if it went
Yeah.
into the
So-
reserves, it could be used for the.
It could, however, if you end fiscal year 25 and have an undesignated fund balance of 791,000, we automatically need to reduce the amount that we're saying we're going to use to go towards the next year's budget.
Yeah, I realized that in my head.
I'm waiting for that.
Your plan is to keep about 600,000 of it to pull forward. I just remember that.
And we need, you know.
And that was my
cash
next
flow.
question. So my next question is cash flow wise, will that number meet the school's cash flow needs? That was because I think we have to be very thoughtful that we don't get ourselves into we've been cash heavy and coming down this quickly and could potentially bring in a cash flow challenge that I think somebody smarter than me needs to think through. Because we're in a cash flow issue right now, we've run over $1 million under. We're not in a cash flow issue. If we were in that position, it looks like on paper we would be in a cash flow problem.
Definitely.
But you're meeting the law. Which-
Well, we have to pay our teachers, so
We
I
would get paid.
don't want to
We
do
would get
it.
payroll.
If we were complying with the 5% instead of the 9%, we would be meeting the law and we would have a cash flow issue. I mean, so it's kind of hard to, you can only.
I just want to be thoughtful in advance that it looks like we're going to have a cash flow issue and what can we do in anticipation way in advance so maybe we either avert it or plan for it. That's all.
And this is where we wanna get Michael Chamings involved and make sure he's clear on the plan and where we're headed, especially with the annual town meeting questions. He's very.
And there's one variable that can't be seen, and that is when do you actually expend for your projects? So you've assigned the money for a project, but you haven't actually completed the project yet. So you've got the cash on hand because the project hasn't been completed. You know, there's those sort of,
That was about
Budgetary.
200,000.
yeah, I mean, there's those sort of budgetary things that can be managed.
I know on the
based
town side, we can pull from reserves to meet cash flow and then put the money back. We have that ability. I'm not sure what the school has to meet cash flow. So I think somebody needs to be thoughtful before we drain it down to that plus 6.
Cause it's this time of year where we're about to collect the majority of our revenue come April 1. So once we get to April 1, cash flow wise, we're in really good shape. So we just need to plan for that.
We have more consistent cash flow
From us.
from the town and from the state
Yeah.
and from our tuitioning districts. So we're not gearing up and, oh man, we gotta get to April 1, like we are a little better off obviously with our cash flow. But you get into those summer months where there is no more tuition money coming in and the state subsidy, I don't know. We've never had that problem. The district's always been very cash healthy and significantly in the last 4 years.
I know, and that's why I'm putting this red flag up, and I'm not going to beat a dead horse, but we've been under, our revenue has been $1 million under our expenses. Our expenses have been $1 million higher than our revenue. Am I remembering that correctly? It's been $1 million something.
On the cost center report?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So assuming that that's representing true cash in and out, $1 million is more than that. All right,
One other
I'm beating
item,
my dead horse.
unrelated to the 25 budget. Okay. So, but this makes for a good
Yes.
question to ask. It's unrelated to the 25 budget. 26. Right?
My heart
So 26, we're using $1,025,000 carry forward. in '26, if everything goes according to plan, which I think is a good plan, we've got 790,000. We won't have, in a perfect world, we won't have anything really to carry forward.
Yeah, I just don't think that is possible. I think our system is clearly, we over budget, we under expend. I think if we got it to 2%, that would be great. And now we're at 390 to 400 we're carrying forward,
Right.
somewhere in that range.
So let's say 400. What we're telling the town today, or this year, is you've worked really hard to make either zero increase or near zero increase. But next year, it's, you can call it what you want, there will be an increase next year. And it will be an increase in the order of probably close to $1 million, considering inflation. And there's not a whole lot that we can do about it. You can call it a fiscal cliff that we've all been talking about, but it's something that I think has value to start communicating it now, so it doesn't bite us a year from now. Because we really don't have many options with it.
Yeah, so if you were to build a budget with a hypothetical $400,000 placeholder, right? So we nail it. We nail the $1 million this year, and whatever that looks like. We spend 2% next year. We're able to move $400,000 forward. In wages and benefits alone, you're $800,000, right? So that's an automatic increase, right? Every year you're going to have $800,000, right? That's just
That in theory, the state's gonna pay for a portion of, so it's not 800,000 to the town, it's 800,000 on the
the
bottom.
operating expenditure budget, $800,000, 100%. You saw that the town went up about, the town and the state combined went up about $500,000, right? You said 500, whatever that number was, 527. Well, if that happened every year and your enrollment went up, a little bit of an increase to the town, but they are going to have to come up with that $1 million, right? Because that has been the placeholder now for a couple of years, 100%.
Right. So we can do as good a job as possible to recalibrate this year, which is needed.
Yep.
But the result of the calibration is next year there's a bill to come. Especially if we take care, if we
recalibrate,
recalibrate
Yes.
and we fix our unassigned
Yes.
fund balance like we're supposed to.
Yep.
So we're calibrated correctly,
Yep.
which is an art, not a science. And then the unassigned fund balance is managed.
Yep.
There's a bill that comes next year.
Yep.
And I just think that needs to be communicated.
I completely agree, and I'm trying to wrap my head around what it might be, and maybe it's irrelevant. We just need to get the message out there that it could be substantial. In my mind, I'm seeing that you're not going to spend the 973 operationally. In my mind, I'm hearing that you're going to spend about 573 of it, and then 400 of it you're going to pull forward to the next year as your buffer. So therefore, it's about 573 that we have to come up because we know prices aren't going down. And then on top of that, it's going to be inflation. And then capital, if we go up or down in capital, it's either going to go up or down, which is partly why I'm saying at some point, if we settle in at a capital amount, even if we don't spend it on capital every year, even if we put portion of it into reserve, just to stable that, because once we get tight, it's going to be this.
Yeah, you just want the same, roughly
ballpark.
the same amount.
And I didn't want to distract from this
No.
conversation. It's just, I mean,
The messaging
you're a
is
short timer
important.
now. If you can leave that sticky note on your desk.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
you all
Sorry.
know, right? We have to recalibrate. We have to get more accurate. That's the goal. But that comes with other challenges too. Right? And that's okay. Then the last thing I would just show you tonight. Okay, just look up for a second. That's not me.
On the reserve account, it still looks like we have 300 in the athletic complex reserve.
We have not requested any drawdown from the town on that yet.
We bought the equipment.
We have bought the equipment. I don't know the exact dollar amount of what we have paid for to date, but we definitely have spent some of it, but we have not submitted yet to
Okay.
the town for reimbursement.
Can I just throw out there, if you're planning to put money in reserve, now it has a 3-year timer on it. If we don't spend the money that's in the reserve already, it doesn't have a 3-year timer on it. If it went in before we hit the 9%, 5% mark. So if we take it out to use it and then put it in for something else, we're causing a timer that we don't need to trigger. We just leave it in an account and repurpose it later. Just put that out there.
This slide was already alluded to earlier. I didn't change the other one though, but this is your local contribution from both your town, your debt service, your additional local, and you change one more number there with your total amount that you'd be receiving in those 4 major areas. And you can see the increase to that, obviously minus the 50,000 for food service for this year. And then lastly, I just feel like this is a really important slide to show because it gets back into the, okay, we've calibrated, we are now spending and budgeting and spending to a percentage that we're all comfortable with, but what is that ongoing cost to doing business? And your business is your people, right? Your people are where most of your money is, and this is just the increase that we anticipate by collective bargaining agreements. And I just call them CBA 1, 2, and 3 right now, and then other, because you also have district administration, you have, people that are, directors, you have a bus mechanic, right? You've got, all your principals and other directors, myself, all the central office staff, and then your 3 collective bargaining agreements there. So I just like to show you that those are the numbers right now. We're in negotiation, and we have placeholders for health insurance, but that's what you're looking at for roughly what we anticipate wage and benefits increase to be. Hopefully, health insurance isn't as high as we put it in for, but we're waiting. So
We won't even have that number at least until the first week of April.
we anticipate it. We're hopeful any change is a benefit to us in the budget process. So I feel like we did a budget aggressively for the unknowns, so that any change would be positive. I also included in your slides, and I'm going to post this tomorrow morning into the website. I put every cost center in, but remember those hopefully will all be changing because we're going to be going back and recalibrating. But I put every cost center in, showed you last year, showed you this year. Put some notes in, a few of them. Hey, these are where wages are. This is what's going up here and there. If it's all right with you, we're already at 512 and going through the cost center. You just got the big daddy picture here, so we're okay with that. You have it with you, and I'll put it on the website tomorrow morning. So, any other feedback?
I can just, go ahead. If I can just provide my guidance, maybe it doesn't align with everyone else's, but I think the total change that you have, I think it was 4.2%,
Yes,
and you're gonna try to get it down to 19.7.
somewhere in that range. Yeah.
I think my guidance would be get it there, because it aligns to inflation. We're talking at 19.7, we're talking 3.4% versus 3.1% inflation. And I think the town, I would think the town can get their arms around investing in our kids at the level that inflation is growing. So basically, maintaining our investment in our children from a town contribution perspective. Sorry.
Yeah, and I think what you're doing absolutely aligns with that. And I just wanted to ask for a back brief, or give you a back brief on the revenue side of it. The revenue side that, as you have posted right now, comes in at 19.4. And then when we talked about the projects pulling additional, there's gonna be 390, I'm just calling it
406.
406.
Yeah.
So that brings you to that 19.8 and change.
Yeah.
So we're really close to even meeting that 0 increase that I keep asking for. You're gonna hit what Jesse's saying of your inflation increase, which is, I agree, it's absolutely important that we give to students what in the schools what we need. And we can, it's right here, it's, you know, fingernail close.
We're getting close.
And when you get to that point, there's not much room for criticism. I mean, I don't know how we can make it any sweeter than that.
And then the other good thing too is that, and I appreciate the feedback from both of you. This budget does include 2 added positions and a halftime curriculum coordinator. So there's already been a lot of really good work at the principal director level, at Jamie's level, to, hey, let's make sure that, you know, we went back and reset electric charges and, you know, how much we're spending on electricity and how much we're spending on oil. And really, rather than just increase for the sake of, you know, a lot of that is being looked at and scrutinized. And I think everybody's doing, you know, a really good job at it. We recognize that these are expensive times.
And you retained a nurse. I mean, not that
Yeah.
the nurse was in danger of losing her. I mean, I don't want that out there, but
No,
it was
that's
something that needed to be considered.
Yeah.
And that was, I know that it was communicated to me that was something that you guys said that you
that was a high priority.
priority.
Yeah.
And I think even around the teacher on the middle school, there were still some creative things being done. For instance, we are moving our music teacher over here more to be able to add more electives, and we are shifting the HMS show choir person back to the high school to be able to provide more electives. I think that there's a lot of creative work between all of us to be able to make this work within the constraints that you guys provided us.
And I really do want to say that I feel heard. This has been the 3rd budget year, first time I was up there, the 3rd time I've been working on it, and I feel that the budget process and the budget's gotten tighter and better as far as coming to actual and trying things and learning from it, and I really appreciate it. And I know that this year is going to be really hard on some people in our community because they're going to lose this year coming up. They're going to lose their state funding to keep their taxes flat because the state yanked it from them. So the fact that we can keep this year the same as last year is going to be good to our seniors because they're just going to have to, it's almost, you know, if we were going up 2 years in a row, they're going to have to go 2 levels on their property taxes. Instead, they're just coming up to what last year was because we're working really hard on both sides to keep it flat. And that's going to be helpful to our seniors. And hopefully not at the detriment of our kids because that's really not the goal either. It's really like, like you said, recalibrating, being smart about some things, how we buy and that sort of stuff.
Well, I appreciate all your feedback, all your work. It's been great. Thank you so much. And yeah, have a good week. Drive through safely. Enjoy that cold weather. Let's leave the house.
But they used to say to me when I was younger, you don't have to go home, but you can't stay here.
I think I've said that to students.
I wasn't in school.
Usually about one in the morning.
Yeah, Dice Arch is still open back in the door.
I remember going to Dice Arts at 2 a.m. in the morning.
I don't know. I think it is.
I kind of wish those days were back.
Yeah.
I love it. Yeah.
Dave's favorite, 2 in the morning. It's the one with the corned beef hash.
yeah.
It didn't plant up to.
Remember the ice cream pie? Ice cream pie at like midnight, 1 a.m.
See you guys.
See ya.
Good night.
See you later.
All right, Josh, thank you. Have a good night.
Well, I hope you can communicate positive news to the committee tonight. And,
Oh, right, the council
The
meets
council.
tonight.
an hour?
Yes. We have to gather my thoughts. Articulate it correctly. Huh?
Is there anything you need for tonight?
Yeah. Right, they are. So, recalibrating, I'm getting excess, parking 2%. I think those are the big pieces.
So what we're doing.
Yeah.
I was talking.
I don't really know.
Forgetting about
Say, look,
at least through next month.
Just leaving me?